Hey everybody, welcome to DadsDen of Pop Culture, or maybe I should say Nanu Nanu, because today we're looking at Mattel's 1979 Mork from Ork action figure. It's almost more of a doll, really. So let's get a little closer look at Mork there. Not a bad likeness of Robin Williams. Now, of course, remember, these were not intended for adult collectors who were going to be super worried about such things. They were designed for kids to play with. And you notice, at least I hope you notice, that Mork has a rather large backpack on. Now you can see from the straps here that would come off. You could take that off of the character. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to have to put it back on at some point. Now what this was for is for talking. This is a talking toy. So let's go over a couple things before we test out whether it works or not. Now, the body that was used for this is the same that was used for a line of dolls that they had called the Sunshine Family. And honestly, they're kind of a terrifying set of dolls. The bodies, it was something that they had on hand that they could use. But they don't really look all that good. And they don't have the sort of the posability of the Megos of the time, for example. But it was, it was cheap and it was existing. And so they tended to use them whenever they could. And one of the things they used them for was the Space 1999 figures. Now you see essentially the same body. Maybe the head's a little bit smaller. I could imagine an encounter between Captain Koenig and Mork, and I think it would go a little something like this. No, we're not going to do that. But you could see the hands, for example. They don't move, they don't flex. They're just rigid. You don't have elbow movement. You do have knee movement, so you can pose a little bit like that. But so the same body's used for Space 1999, used for Mork. Now, when I got this particular figure, it was without shoes. And I did some looking around, and in fact, the gray boots that went with this figure are the same boots that they used for the Sunshine Family. And while I couldn't find any of those for sale, or any of Mork's boots for sale, I did find some for the Sunshine Family, and I was really tempted to maybe get them, but they weren't the right color. And that would have required me to, to maybe like paint them or something. I was like, don't really want to pay like $10 for these little plastic boots and have to do that to them. So these are actually silver, like military boots that I got off of ClassicTVToys.com. They're just about perfect, really, for the character. The one thing I had to do, though, to get them on his feet, you'll see, is I had to slit up the back. But these cost me a couple bucks, so not that bad. I didn't mind, having to cut them a little bit. But that way, at least I got the boots on this character. Clearly, with this thing on his back, he's going to need a stand if I'm going to display him that way. I've had him sort of sitting on my shelf next to some of the other sci-fi stuff I have. When Mork and Mindy came out, it was an unbelievable hit. And as a kid, I was definitely one of the show's biggest fans. But I didn't have a lot of merchandise. I did recently, when we were clearing out my father's old house, we did find a set of Colorforms that I think were my sister's, but I probably played with them quite a bit. The box is a little worse for wear, but not in terrible, terrible shape. And if you've never seen Colorforms, you don't really know what they are. Let's move these guys out of the way a little bit here. You would essentially, and you see we got some tape that was holding the box together there. You essentially had like this little scene, and this is the apartment, or I guess it was an apartment that Mindy lived in on the show. And you get all these different little pieces. And there's sort of this, thin kind of a plastic, and you could sort of stick them onto the board. Now, these have sort of lost their stickiness, but you could put, Mork, he's got his little legs there. Mindy, put the top half of Mindy there next to it. What do we got? Splink. We got Nanu. We'll have Mork saying Splink, I guess. Move that out of the way. Put her like that. And then we got to go find their arms so we can put them next to that. You get the basic idea here. Okay. And you could make little scenes with the characters. Oh, there's a nice Shazbot right there. And they used to make these for all sorts of stuff. And I mean, nowadays you could essentially do this with, a graphics program. I got to say, these two, they are still soft. They don't stick quite as well, but they're not in terrible shape. Do I dare? So you have these little trays that you could use. Get this sucker back in there. And you have these trays you could use to put all these pieces back on here. And, obviously you're not going to have them all sitting all over the board when you're playing with them. But that's about the only Mork and Mindy thing. Well, I say other. That's the only Mork and Mindy thing I had when I was a kid. Because this talking Mork I only got recently in an auction. Let me keep Captain Koenig up here. So I didn't have many Mork toys, but I definitely remember playing it and thinking it was absolutely hilarious. Now, I will admit, at the time, my mother was not a big fan of Mork. And as a kid, it was just like, are you insane, woman? I mean, this is the funniest thing that's ever existed. Well, my mother was a kindergarten teacher. She had an AM class, PM class, 20 to 25 kindergartners in each. A somewhat hyperactive man-child was not really her idea of a show she wanted to relax with at night. And I have to admit, now that I am an adult, and I was watching some old Mork and Mindy's, I'm kind of like, yeah, I see where she's coming from. Mork is a little bit aggravating. So anyways, though, but Robin Williams, genius little character. It was a fun show. So let's get down to what we're really all waiting for. Does the voice pack work? Now, one thing, and I didn't even realize this at first, it is not battery operated. It's just pull string. Let's see if it works well. I'm going to bring the mic a little bit on. Oh, there's the mic. Okay, we'll put it up next to the mic. Be very careful with this thing. And now, bear in mind, maybe a little garbled. Well, he definitely talked. I'm not sure what he said. Okay, that one was, practical joke. Okay, so we did get that one. Whoops. A little bit of noise moving that thing. So, in fact, yes, the voice box does work, which is why I went ahead and bid on him. I'd seen a few, and so one of the things that I decided when I started collecting a few toys was to try to focus on characters that I really loved in childhood, shows that I loved when I was a kid, things like that. And so Mork was definitely on my list. Of course, and it seems appropriate to bring him out, even though a different scale. Fonzie, of course, Mork, first introduced on Happy Days as sort of a spin-off. We had a duel between Fonzie and Mork. I was a complete Fonzie freak when I was a kid. And I was a Mork freak too. So I wanted one of these, but I did decide relatively early on, he's got to have the voice pack and it's got to work. I'm not going to bother with one that doesn't. Would have liked to have had the original shoes, but I can live without those. And maybe I'll pick them up someday. Who knows? I think these will work fine. But so I haunted around various auctions. This guy finally came up. And I think it was actually just a buy it now on eBay. at a really good price, so I couldn't pass it up. So I finally added good old Mork to my collection of childhood heroes, and we'll once again take a look at it. So folks, what do you think of Mork from Ork? Did you love the show? Big Robin Williams fan. Robin Williams fan. Let me know what you think of this particular toy. It doesn't do much, but this was not invented or not designed for adult collectors who want to pose everything and have everything in the same scale and all that. It was a toy for kids, and I'm sure kids had a lot of fun. And I'm glad some kid was pretty gentle with this guy, because he's pretty well intact, and pretty happy about that. But let me know what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed this little video, this quick show and tell of Mork from Ork, please like, maybe subscribe, maybe share with a friend. I try to do some toy videos every so often because this is DadsDen of pop culture, and toys are definitely a big part of pop culture, at least here in the US of A, but I'm pretty sure everywhere in the world. So until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. And until next time, Nanu, Nanu.